Should central banks issue a new digital form of money?
It's about preparing for what is absolutely sure to come.
You are reinventing the history of money.
The FinTech agenda is really, really important.
We expect it to be integrated with social media, readily available for online and person-to-person use, including micropayments.
If the African countries want to compete in the economy of the future, they have to be ready their citizens have to be ready, and they're not right now.
That there are nearly 2 billion people who are financially excluded.
Future will be much more digitally demanding.
There are already signs in some shop windows. Cash not accepted.
Now you have the explosion of middle-class aspirations everywhere in the world. And so the new multilateralism is going to have to respond to this desire that everyone will have to participate fully in society.
More inclusive multilateralism.
What is the role of the state? What is the role of a central bank in that new monetary landscape?
I just don't think that the traditional powers of the world can sit back and think that a sense of entitlement, a sense of going backward, closing borders is going to work given what the economy will look like in just a very short time.
Right. Should central banks issue a new digital form of money, a state-backed token, or perhaps an account held directly at the central bank and available to people and firms for retail payments, to each of you?
Even in the wealthiest countries in the world, there are people who did not benefit from globalization.
And they're angry.
And they're angry. This is different. It's not about post-colonial charity anymore. It's about giving everyone an opportunity.
The digital currency would be a liability of the state, like cash today. There are central banks around the world that are considering this option. In countries like Canada, like China, like Sweden, like Uruguay. And they are embracing change and new thinking, as indeed we are at the IMF.
More inclusive multilateralism is making sure that everybody has the benefit of it. I'm talking from this financial perspective, but what Jim is saying is exactly that. Everybody has to benefit from it. It cannot be just for those who do the trade. It has to do with those who participate in making things, in providing services, and they have to be part of that as well, and they have to see hope as a result of that.
We heard some really very interesting presentations, especially one from Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I think he said something very important. He said, you can look at these institutions and tear them down, but we will have to build them up again, and it will be much more difficult to do so. You know, our institutions came out of the post-World War II a situation in which there was recognition that we couldn't go back to the chaos of before, where, for example, in terms of our two institutions, a big concern was that currencies would the values would go up and down, there would be beggar thy neighbor policies. There had to be somewhere where we could talk about things like currency exchange rates. And then for our organization, there had to be somewhere where we could talk about what it would take to rebuild Europe, in the case of our institution. But then that grew to rebuilding so many different societies. You know, the new multilateralism is responding, I think, to something that's fundamentally different from the period of World War I, which is that new technologies are allowing everyone to see how everyone else lives. You know, within the next 5 to 10 years, everyone on Earth will have access to broadband. And when they do, everyone on Earth will be able to see how everyone else lives. And so what we're seeing right now is everyone's aspirations are going up. You know, 100 years ago, there were very few wealthy people, the royals and the people around them, and pretty much everyone else was living in extreme poverty, living off the land, barely in subsistence mode. But now you have the explosion of middle-class aspirations everywhere in the world, and so the new multilateralism is going to have to respond to this desire that everyone will have to participate fully in society. And that's a lot of what both of our organizations do, to try to create the conditions where everyone will have an opportunity to reach their aspirations. And that really wasn't what was happening between World War I and World War II. There were still huge amounts of extreme poverty in the world and very few people who actually were able to live that middle-class lifestyle.